like to apologise for speaking seated. It's because I sprained my knee. And second, I'd like to say welcome to the Noble Lord Offord as his first outing as Minister, and I look forward very much to his maiden speech later. Now, between July 2019 and March last year, government ministers had 63 meetings with fossil fuel and biomass producers. Now, that's 9 times the number of meetings they had with renewable energy companies. And it slightly strikes me as odd, as a government that chaired COP26 and is meant to be switching to renewables very fast, but meets fossil fuel and biomass companies 9 times more than the companies that they're meant to be relying on to deliver a sustainable future they're promising. It just strikes me as a bit odd. As well as the small private meetings, ministers also attended hundreds of other larger group meetings with fossil fuel companies and their representatives. Fossil fuel producers were present at 309 of these, compared with 60 for renewable energy generators. Again, I don't understand why ministers are focusing on a polluting industry that we need to shut down, rather than renewables with all the new job opportunities which we need to grow very rapidly. But there's a clue, because the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson since 2019 has taken almost £1.5 million in donations from the energy industry. Now, that is a slightly disturbing fact, and I mention that because my intention in this debate is to draw attention to the fact that we live in a corrupt country run by autocratic ministers who facilitate their friends pocketing large amounts of public money, either directly via government contracts or indirectly through putting holes in the regulatory system. And we've seen this recently with the fast-track scheme for PPE contracts, the second jobs scandals involving MPs, and all sorts of lobbying like David Cameron on behalf of Greensill. Money buys access, and access gives you everything from subsidies to licences. And the point I'm making is that corruption has real-world impacts on government policy and the lives of ordinary people. If you're in the development industry, it might give you changes to planning red tape. If you're in the energy business, it might buy you another decade of profitable polluting while the planet burns. So we have a government that's keen to support a polluting industry that is equally keen to support the government. And that might be excused if the oil and gas industry were filling the coffers of the Treasury as well as the Conservative Party. But surprisingly, that isn't always the case. In a recent court case brought by some climate campaigners, the judge acknowledged that in some years, oil and gas companies had paid less in taxes than they received in tax breaks. The judge wrote, "The claimants point to clear evidence of negative taxation flows in particular years, specifically negative tax flows overall in 2015 to 16 and 2016 to 17 of £2 million and £359 million respectively." Now, the judge quite rightly said that focusing on single years ignored the fact that the tax position over the life of the concession is at worst neutral. Now, we know that UK oil and gas is one of the most profitable countries for the industry in the world, but we can't even be sure that it pays its own way in tax. The government will claim that there is no subsidy for oil and gas, as it defines fossil fuel subsidies as measures that reduce the effective price of fossil fuels below world market prices. In other words, the government is giving the industry millions of pounds in tax breaks, but this isn't a subsidy because it doesn't result in lower prices for consumers. Well, that's absolutely brilliant, obviously. But if the government doesn't like the word subsidy, we could just call it fossil fuel support. Our government doesn't deny the tax breaks. It just makes clear that this doesn't lower prices. It just enables the companies to make more profits. In fact, it is so profitable that those making money out of this polluting industry have enough spare cash to give to the Conservative Party. And I think that's obviously something we need to be concerned about. And of course, a previous Prime Minister Cameron, if he hadn't cut what he called the green crap, our energy bills would be £40 lower each. Imagine how much lower if they had been serious about insulating homes and expanding cheap renewable electricity, reducing our current reliance on foreign gas. Now, I won't go into all the details of the donations made by the industry, directly and indirectly, as we would actually need far longer than the hour that we have to list them. Our self-regulatory system of government does not stop people buying influence. Civil servants are not around to take notes when a minister attends a party fundraiser where oil executives have paid £12,000 for a seat at the table. Civil servants can't know what conversations go on when an MP gets a huge donation to their private office a few months before they're appointed as a minister in charge of the projects that the donor wants to push through. It's happened in the last few years, and to be fair, the minister I'm thinking about stepped aside from a major decision, but only after the media contacted them. The National Audit Office can't even get access to ministers' WhatsApp conversations with party donors about favoured projects, unless the minister self-declares that they regard the messages as relevant. Even when ministers have been taken to court to get those messages, suddenly the phone is broken or lost. Or they do a Boris and claim the messages were lost when he changed his phone number. It's not very nice, is it? Quite honestly, it's shameful. Now, this is the year that we chaired, or last year we chaired COP26, but the government is now dishing out a large number of licences for North Sea exploration. I really don't see how this can be compatible with reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. There are generic conditions that have to be met, but only on new submissions. As I understand it, projects already in the pipeline can get a licence without reference to climate change. How is that? How is that possible? Individuals and companies linked to the oil and gas industries have donated more than £400,000 to the Conservative Party in the last year, while the government mulled over these new licences. There might be parliamentary rules that stop peers like me from asking written questions about the influence such donations have on the ministers making the decisions, which I have tried to do and was stopped, but it's clear and obvious that the influence is there. So, what we have is an acknowledgement that corruption is rife, the negative impacts on our environment are clear, and I really want to hear from the Minister today how we're going to junk the broken system of self-regulation in favour of a more robust legal system that either involves the police or an end to large-scale donations. The days of having a ministerial code enforced by somebody appointed by the Prime Minister really should be gone. It doesn't work when ministers don't play by the rules. Thank you.